This video is in response to the video, The Top 10 Creationist Arguments by the Thinking Atheist. Before we get started, let me say this. Tearing apart the arguments presented by the Thinking Atheist is incredibly easy to do. So easy, in fact, that I'm afraid I might come across as arrogant, which I don't mean to do. I understand that some of you are genuinely trying to sort out these issues, and I want to respect and encourage your process of inquiry. As you view the video presented by the Thinking Atheist, keep something in mind. Having nice graphics, catchy background music, and an authoritative sounding voice does not mean you are spreading reliable information. But let's get on to his 10 arguments. Number 1, carbon dating isn't accurate to determine the age of the Earth. Well, hey, no informed creationist is going to use this argument. They understand the limits of carbon dating as well as, or better than, evolutionists. An old Earth creationist has no problem with the dating methods, and a young Earth creationist will challenge the assumptions that go into the dating methods, so it really is a non-argument. Number 2, you can't prove evolution. Hang on. Just because the Thinking Atheist says man has unlocked the world of genetics to prove that all living things have and do evolve doesn't make it so. An assertion is not the same as an argument. He offers no proof at all that evolution is observable, provable science, only his word and the word of one Stephen Jay Gould. If it's so observable and provable, then prove it. Now let's set the record straight. The informed creationist has no issue with microevolution, that is, evolution within a kind. For example, we know that strains of antibiotic-resistant bacteria evolve. What you can't prove and have not observed is macroevolution. You cannot establish the links between bacteria, for example, and a tadpole because those links do not exist. He cites the similarities in DNA between chimps and humans as an argument for evolution. That's sort of like saying your kitchen cabinet evolved from your coffee table because they're both made out of wood. The genetics he cites, instead of proving evolution, are the strongest argument against it. He says chimp DNA is 98% like human DNA. Let's do the math on that. Human DNA has 3 billion, that's billion with a B, nucleotide pairs, or about 12 billion atoms. I understand that evolutionists do not contend that humans evolved from chimps. I understand the concept of a common ancestor. But for sake of argument, for something like a chimp to evolve into a human, 240 million of these atoms would need to magically rearrange into exactly the right 60 million nucleotide pairs. Huh? Like, how is that going to happen? 240 million atoms are just going to swap places without any divine intervention just so the theory of evolution by natural selection can be proven true. Right. If you believe that, I have some land in Florida you might like to buy. Number 3, if man evolved from monkeys, why do we still have monkeys? Come on, this is an argument from the 1930s. No informed creationist would use it today. Number 4, the human eye is too complex to have evolved. Irreducible complexity. Well, first of all, the human eye is one of a million examples of irreducible complexity. But the Thinking Atheist totally misunderstands the concept of irreducible complexity. It has nothing to do whatever with the existence of simpler life forms that have similar capabilities. Instead, irreducible complexity means that all the parts of a system must be present and operational in order for the system to work. This is the fundamental flaw with evolution. Every macroevolutionary jump requires thousands, if not millions, of moving parts to magically be in place in order for the transition to take place. Think about it. Not only do these thousands of mutations need to take place simultaneously and without error in one creature, but they also have to take place in another creature of the opposite gender at about the same time. The two need to find each other, mate, produce offspring that also mate in order for this new population to start. This is an off-the-charts mathematical impossibility. I think the reason people see evolution as a religion is because it takes so much faith to believe these kinds of mathematical impossibilities magically happen not once, but millions of times. And as a footnote, sure, owls have better eyes than humans. And that's because humans are not designed to fly through the woods at 40 miles per hour at night catching mice. For the record, bloodhounds have better noses than humans, too. On to number 5. Atheism is actually a religion. I mean, that whole discussion is pure semantic hot air. It totally depends on how you define religion. If you define religion as a belief in a supernatural God, then of course atheism is not a religion. If you define religion as a response to the idea of the existence of a supernatural God, then atheism is a religion. It's pure semantics. Number 6, scientist X believes in God. And then the Thinking Atheist goes on to tell us about all the scientists and all the scientific groups that reject the idea of God and reject intelligent design. Well, look, the same kind of groupthink that kept alchemy alive for centuries prevails today. Professors are afraid of losing tenure and researchers are afraid of losing grants. They march in lockstep with the prevailing winds, which at the moment, instead of being alchemy and bloodletting, is evolution by natural selection. I'm not surprised by your numbers. I'm saddened by them, however. America is supposed to have this great educational system, but so few people are capable of thinking for themselves. Number 7, everything happened by chance. And then they talk about how natural selection promotes non-random change of specific desirable traits over time. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, look, here's the problem with chance. The issue of chance has nothing to do with natural selection, but has everything to do with what happened at the beginning. How do you get several 100 million atoms to line up in precisely the right formation to form even the most primitive form of life? Mathematically, that's sort of like winning the lottery every day of your life. Number 8, America was founded as a Christian nation. Of course, this is not an argument for creationism. Number 9, the second law of thermodynamics, or entropy, disproves evolution. Well, here, the Thinking Atheist finally makes a good point. I always thought that the argument of entropy was a weak and lousy argument in support of creationism. It doesn't prove evolution, but it doesn't disprove it either. And by the way, if you need to know, the first law of thermodynamics is the conservation of energy. The second law is entropy. And the third law is the entropy of a perfect crystal at absolute zero is exactly equal to 0. Number 10, Adolf Hitler was an atheist, and he goes on to quote Adolf Hitler's belief in God. I have never heard a creationist reference Hitler's religious beliefs. However, since you do bring it up, let's think this through. How do you, as an evolutionist, justify swatting a mosquito that's sucking your blood? Simple. You have evolved into a higher form of life. Some genetic combinations are better than others. You can swat that mosquito because natural selection should weed out all the undesirables. I'm sure Hitler felt he was doing just that when he murdered 6 million Jews. In his mind, they were at the lower end of the evolutionary gene pool and deserved to be wiped out. The Thinking Atheist says that his worldview is based on evidence that God exists only in the imagination of man. What evidence? The reality is, we only see what we want to see. If you want to see evidence for God, it's all around you. Keep in mind that faith is not an intellectual struggle with the facts. Faith is a moral struggle with God. And often, intellectual arguments are nothing more than a smokescreen designed to cover up our naked rebellion against God. Evolution by natural selection is a theory that's been around for 150 years. Like alchemy and bloodletting in the past, it seems true because a whole bunch of people want it to be true. Creationism has been around for thousands of years. It has stood the test of time. It will still be here when our descendants are shaking their heads at evolution and asking why anybody could have ever bought something so incredibly impossible.